All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Bryan McKenzie. I have the privilege to serve with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes as Director of Football. And this is our 10th edition of the Heart of the Coach. And we're so glad you're with us today just to hear the Heart of a Coach. Hopefully it encourages you and equips you to be all that God's called you to be as a coach. And our special guest today is a good friend of mine, Tim Horton, who's a running backs coach at Vanderbilt. Tim, welcome to the Heart of the Coach.
Well, thank you very, very much. It's an honor to be here. And it's really neat for me to look out here and see someone like Jeb Huckabee and Clay Hendricks and Ken Leonard and Grant, just so many people that, heck, I feel like I should be the one that's in the audience, not talking, but I really appreciate having the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, well, you're right. The reality is probably every single coach on here could share their heart and we'd all benefit. So
absolutely.
Well, Tim, tell us briefly about your family.
Well, and again, I know a lot of the coaches on this call, and I know a lot of your wives. So just like most of the coaches on here, I outkicked my coverage as well. So my wife, Lauren, is from Conway, Arkansas. We were high school sweethearts. We've got two children, Caroline, who's an Auburn University grad. She's a nanny here in Nashville. And then we've got a son, Jackson, who will have his last day of virtual school tomorrow from Brentwood Academy here in Brentwood, Tennessee. So really blessed, got a great wife and two really good kids.
Great. Well, where's Jackson going to end going to school?
Jackson is going to go to Jeb Huckabee's alma mater down there. He's going to be a Razorback. And so please pray for him.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, Tim, I like to ask this question, and most coaches like to hear it. What's the greatest football game you've ever been a part of, and why was it such a great game?
There's been a lot. Unfortunately, like most coaches, you tend to think of the losses as opposed to the wins. I know I see Coach Hendricks there from Furman, and there were a couple of years when we were at Appalachian and he was at Furman that he gave us some big-time heartbreaks, but I almost think of it in terms of stops in places that I've been. I know when I was at Arkansas, I'm trying to think, it may have been 2007. LSU won the national championship that year, and we beat them the last week of the regular season. I think it was the day after Thanksgiving, 50-48 in triple overtime. They were the number one team in the country. That was that one that sticks out. Then when I was at Auburn, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the kick six game when, that may be one of the most famous games in college football. That was a neat deal. And then a little later when I was at Auburn, I think it was 2017, we beat number one Georgia and number one Alabama back to back. So you don't get to play those number one teams very often, but you sure don't get to beat them very often. But those were neat wins. And I've always thought that when you're the big underdog and you can go beat somebody that you're really not supposed to, those are kind of special wins. So been really blessed to be a part of some big wins like that.
Yeah, that's great. I remember some of those wins, probably watched many of them. Well, Tim, here's a question that a lot of people need to be asking. I know you've asked this and answered this question, but why do you coach? What's your why?
I've always felt like it's my ministry. I've wanted to be a servant, and this is probably my best avenue to do it. Like many of the other coaches on here, it's the relationship part. I love the player-coach relationship part. I like the coach-coach relationship part. I even like the fan-coach relationship part. So that's a big deal to me. Obviously, we're all competitors. You like the competition part. And then for me, and really the way I think of it in terms of the ministry that I want to have is it's a great way for me to encourage people, whether it's a player or a manager or a student trainer or, another coach. I've always thought that coaching can be a great way to lift people up and encourage people.
I love it, Coach. That's living out Paul's admonition to us in Philippians 2, where he says to do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but regard others as more important to yourself. And what a great heart to be a servant and to do it as a football coach, and great opportunities to do that. Well, Tim, many coaches have a checklist that kind of helps them get ready for a game or a practice and helps their players get ready to perform at the highest level. And I know you have another checklist to make sure you're ready to coach in a way that honors the Lord as a Christian coach. Could you just share about that checklist just briefly?
You know, Brian, I don't know if I've got a checklist as such. I do think that there's some things that I would like to, I don't know, conveyed to my players or conveyed to the people that I work with, or even the people in your own house. And first, that would be that I want those that know me the best, you know, to respect me the most. You know, those people that, hey, I'm around my wife every day. I'm around my children now every day. You know, those players every day, and those people that you coach with, you know, I want those folks to respect me the most. We've got a little sign in our kitchen, and we've had it for 30 years, I guess, 25 years. And it says, you know, to try to live in a way that those who know you but don't know God will come to know God because they know you. And so, you know, just the privilege that all of us have to be, you know, incredible role models to these kids. I had the honor the other day of doing a Zoom call with a high school in Alabama, and the coach asked me to talk on just, it ended up being observations you've made in 30 years of coaching, and just the power that we have as coaches, the power of our words. A cute little story I shared at this clinic that I did for Patrick Nix at Pinson Valley High School, who's now at Central Phoenix City. But Patrick, I was telling Patrick this story. You know, I've got a son who's a senior in high school, and he was a sophomore at Auburn High in Auburn, Alabama. And I come home one day from work, and I look in the outdoor garage refrigerator, and we've got all kinds of drinks. I mean, we got Coke, we got Diet Coke, we got 7-Up, we got Dr. Pepper. I mean, it looks like a grocery store. And so I look in there, and I go upstairs to see Jackson when I get home from work, and he's up there in his little room watching a movie, and he's got about 6 cans of Cokes and all these drinks. And I said, you know, Jackson, you're trying to play sports. You may not need to drink all these, you know, drinks. They're really not that good for you. And he said, Dad, I'm a teenager, man. Let me be a kid. So about 2 or 3 days later, I come home and walk into the house, and Jackson's in the kitchen, and he's taken all those soft drinks that were out in the outdoor garage refrigerator, and he's pouring them out. And I'm saying, Jackson, what are you doing? And he said, well, my high school coach talked to us today about nutrition and how we really need to watch about drinking all these sodas. You know, you really don't need to do that because I'm an athlete. And so it just reemphasized to me how much power as a high school coach, as a junior high coach, as a college coach, whatever role you're at, you have over these kids, and the power of our words and the influence of our words, and how you can lift up kids, but unfortunately how you can tear down kids too. And that's the thing that's so neat about looking at these group of faces here, is I know a lot of these people, and that's one of the things I love about spring recruiting, is you get to go into these schools, and man, I walk into that school, and to see someone like Ken Leonard, man, you know, he's going to lift me up. And I think that's one of our great responsibilities that we've got as coaches.
Yeah. Well, so true. You know, the Proverbs say life and death are in the power of the tongue.
No doubt.
We have football coaches been given the
that comes from the master playbook right there now.
Exactly right, brother. That's exactly right. Well, and you kind of, you know, touched on this already, but anything else that how you want your relationship with Jesus to impact your players?
Well,
you got a running back room there, and how your relationship with Jesus really impact them? How would you want that to happen?
Well, we've all heard this, you know, and we've heard it from the pulpit from our preachers on Sunday morning. You know, you want to see a sermon, you don't want to hear it. You know, and I want my players to see a Christian coach. They don't need to hear what a good guy I am, or, you know, hey, they need to see it every day in the way that we live our lives. And so I think that's something that I hope I've done, and I've always tried to do, but I want them to see what a Christian coach looks like, and not just hear what a supposed Christian coach looks like. So I think that's important. One of the things, Bryan, that I've always done, I think one of the most powerful things that you can do with your players and for your players is to pray for them. And there will not be a day that goes by that I generally do it every day with them in the position meetings. The last 3 minutes of the meeting, hey, we'll pray together, and I will specifically pray, for each kid in that meeting. And then, some years it gets where I'm not the one that's saying the prayer every day. There's other players that'll jump in there and they'll want to say it. And we pray for every person in there. And then at Vanderbilt, one of the things that they did before I got here is every day the little running back group got together and said a prayer on the field after practice. But I think that's one thing that I've really done throughout my career is try to pray for those players, and not just in the room by myself or at home or in my office. I try to do it with them. And fortunately, I've never really had anybody that opposed to it. And one thing that's always neat is if for some reason you're in a hurry and you got to get to that practice field quickly, some of those players will say, hold on, coach, we got to say our prayer today before we go. So again, I think one of the best things we can do for our people is to pray for them.
Yeah, that's powerful. You're exactly right, Coach. And we miss that. Sometimes we think it's the big things, because that's a big thing to pray, but sometimes it's a small thing to a player that can go a long way.
No question.
Powerful. Well, Coach, name maybe a couple of the most influential coaches you've worked with, and tell us why they've been so influential in your life.
Well, I've been very blessed because mine started – I'm a coach's kid. My dad was a gentleman named Harold Horton, and Coach Horton was kind of an Arkansas legend. He was a longtime Arkansas Razorback assistant coach and then became the head coach at the University of Central Arkansas. He was there for 8 years. His worst year was his first year when they lost 2. He ended his career there winning 38 in a row. They won 2 national championships, and Dad's still alive and in good health. And so mine started underneath my roof as a little kid growing up because he did things the right way. Then I was really fortunate to play for a coach in college. There's few icons in college football in terms of just the great Christian coach, and someone that I thought was an elite coach as well. And I just seeing Tom Osborne last week, he's one of those guys. I mean, he emulates everything that I think all of us want to be as a man and as a coach. I played for one at Arkansas, a gentleman named Ken Hatfield. Coach Hatfield is just a wonderful, wonderful person. It's the way he treated people. It didn't matter if you were the janitor or the governor. He didn't care, and so to play for Coach Hatfield was a wonderful experience for me. And then I was very fortunate the first 16 years of my coaching career, I had 2 bosses, and they were Jerry Moore at Appalachian State, and they were Fisher DeBerry at the Air Force Academy. And both of those guys, I mean, you talk about doing it right in terms of how they treated their kids, how they treated their coaches, were just great Christ-like examples for me. Since then, I haven't probably been. Derek Mason is in that same category as well at Vanderbilt. But I think those years that I was with Coach DeBerry and with Coach Moore, and then playing for Coach Hatfield, it helped prepare me for some years that I wasn't really with Christian coaches. And could I use my influence in a positive way with coaches that maybe weren't as strong in their faith? And I hope that it has.
Well, great. Yeah, I know Coach Hatfield, and had the privilege to spend some time with him when he was in Houston. I was down that way when he was at Rice, and just a great man of God. Yeah. Well, Coach, you've had the privilege to coach running backs most of your coaching career, really. So because of that, 30 years of experience maybe coaching running backs or close to that, what are some key foundational principles in developing running backs to reach their potential?
Well, I've always thought that and it's not just with running backs. I've always viewed it in this sense, that whenever a kid decides to come play for me or for us or for our team, but particularly as a position coach, that I've always looked at it as a partnership. I mean, we're in a partnership and we're working together to just see a kid be the best he can be. You know, just like all of us, we have all different kinds of levels of players that you've got. I mean, you've got that kid that's an 8 out of a 10, and he's your best player. And my goal and objective has always been, hey, we got to work together, man, to just see you be the best football player you can be. And so my job is to get you to a 9 or a 9.5, however good you can be. And then you got kids that aren't so good. I mean, we've got a kid on our team here at Vanderbilt that's never played. I mean, he's never played, and he's not real good, and he's a 3. But I want to get him to a 4.5 or a 5, you know, and let's work together to try to be the very best, you know, football player that we can be. I've always thought this about coaches as well. A lot of times I think you're in one of two categories. You're a fundamentalist or you're a schemer, okay? And you need them both. And the best ones are those that can do both. They're really good scheme guys and they're really good fundamentalists. I look at Clay Hendricks. Clay Hendricks is a great scheme guy, but Clay Hendricks is a great fundamentalist coach too, you know, and you're talking about first just getting them in a good stance and then making sure they take a good first step and then a good second step, and where's their hand placement and where's their hat placement and where are their hands going to be, you know. But I've always believed that it starts with your fundamentals, and every position has different fundamentals, you know, whether it's the offensive line or the running backs or the wideouts. But for running backs, there's only 4 things that a running back can do on any given play. He's going to run with the ball. He's going to catch a ball. He's going to block. Most of the time, in most of the offenses I've been in, it's pass protect. And then he's going to fake. That's all they do. And so my job as a position coach is to just make them as good as I can through their drills, through their individual work, in those 4 fundamentals. How can I make him a better runner? How can I make him a better pass protector? How can I make him a better pass receiver? And so I look at the fundamental component all the time. That's what I really try to improve them on.
Yeah. Yeah. So key. I still remember in all my career, when I started playing, I was in 3rd grade all the way up to my rookie year in Atlanta. The first thing they started off with the first week was stance and first step, first step, never change at every level. So important. Well, coaches, as a football coach, regardless of what level you're at, your schedule can just sometimes be super hectic, super busy. So what do you do personally during those hectic, busy times to practically foster your relationship with the Lord?
Well, I'm probably not as consistent as I would like to be. But I think you want to start your day in the Word of some type, whether it's the Master Playbook, which is probably the book of preference, but also there's some great daily devotions out there that I have done over the years. I think that's the way you want to start it. I've been very fortunate in the sense that every place that I've been, you know, we've had staff Bible studies, and in fact, I was on a Zoom staff Bible study on Monday at a previous school I was at. And so that was kind of neat to see some of those guys. So I think if you aren't in a regular Bible study, maybe you don't have it at your school. I know I see Jeb Huckabee here, and when Jeb and I were in Fayetteville, Arkansas together, hey, we really didn't have one, and we started one. And the next thing you know, you got 15 guys there, and they're coming every Wednesday morning. And boy, you really grew as a man and grew as a coach. And if you don't have one, maybe you start it yourself, or you get your FCA guy, or you get somebody that can kind of kickstart it with you, because I think that's a great way to grow and to bond with people, and obviously most importantly, grow in your faith. And then something that I've always believed in is this, and my wife's been great about this. You know, most of us are are dads. Most of us are parents or grandparents. Some of us, we've got empty nests, but there's a lot of coaches in this Zoom call that have children that are young. And I think one of the best things that we can do is make sure that we're in God's house on Sunday. And I can't tell you how many times you've gotten home late on Saturday night or Sunday morning, and boy, I felt like sleeping in. And you get up and you go to church because number one, my wife told me we were going to church. And number two, I think it's a great example for your own children. And so those are just some things that I've tried to do and continue to try to do, because just like we feed our face with food, we've got to feed our spirit with the Word of God.
Great. Yeah. Well, another football question here. So, Tim, this fall, November 28th, you're going to be playing at Tennessee. You're down by 5, 3 seconds left. You've got the ball on the 3-yard line. What play do you want to run to win the game and rip the hearts out of 103,000 Vols fans?
One of the things I worked with a gentleman named Bobby Petrino at Arkansas, and Coach Petrino was a really good football coach. I mean, he's got a great offensive mind. I think you've got his school in Missouri now, but Coach Petrino taught me something. He always said, think players, not plays. So, hey, just like you're watching on Sunday night with Michael Jordan and The Last Dance, hey, get the ball to Jordan. You got a good chance to win. Hey, we're going to try to get the ball to our best player and win or lose the game with the ball in his hands.
Good advice.
So,
yeah, Coach Leonard would call that the man offense. Get the ball to the man. Yeah. Well, hey, I'm going to open it up here to some of these coaches, give them a chance to ask you some questions. So if you'd like to ask Coach Horton a question, just unmute yourself and fire away.
Hey, Coach, this is Mike Fass at Towson High School. Thanks for being on. I wanted to ask you, your time at Air Force, how was your job different leading young men at a service academy, especially during that time in which you were there, considering everything going on in our country?
Mike, thanks for the question. You're exactly right. And obviously, Coach Hendricks had a chance to coach at the Air Force Academy. Coaching at an academy is really special because you're talking about, obviously, they're good football players, but you're talking about elite people, just great students. I always liked coaching at Air Force because I knew the players were smarter than the coaches. And so, but I was at the Air Force Academy when 9/11 happened, and I'll never forget it because, as soon as it happened, our offensive coordinator, Chuck Peterson, came in and he said, guys, we won't play this week. And then I'll never forget, for the next 2 years, we had 2 F-16s that accompanied us on the road. Our plane would take off and there would be 2 F-16s that were protecting the pilots of the United States Air Force because it was, such a stressful time. It reminds you in some ways a little bit of what we're going through now. But, in terms of coaching at those places, I just think that those kids want to see good role models too. And I think as coaches, wherever you are, whatever you do, just understanding that our responsibility is to first and foremost use our influence in a positive way. And whether it's at Air Force or Vanderbilt or wherever you coach, is we've got a lot of influence over a lot of people, particularly those kids you're entrusted with, and to use that influence you have in a way that can be positive.
Great.
Thanks, Mike.
Another question.
Coach, Adrian Bazemore here. I'm probably the only track guy. I would laugh about it all the time, but I'm probably the only track guy that ever hops into football chats. My question for you, sir, is off the top of your head, name like a couple of your favorite running backs throughout the years, just off the top of your head.
Well, Adrian, when I was at Arkansas, we had Darren McFadden and Felix Jones, and they were both first-round draft picks, and they were both really good kids. When I was at Auburn, in fact, Granville coached this guy as well, too. We had Kerryon Johnson, and KJ was really a good player. and really the part, it doesn't have to do with being a good player as much as it does just good person. You know, kids that had high morals, had high character. And I look back at some of those good players that had all that, and you see the influence of their mom and their dads. You know, I think about Kerryon Johnson, I think about Peyton Barber, I think about Trey Mason, and I think about, hey, there's a good mom and there's a good dad most of the time. And I think that's important for us to remember, because we've all got children as well.
Good. What other questions?
Hey, Coach, this is Zach Hansen. I was
Hey, Zach, good to see you.
Good to see you, Coach. Hey, I was just curious. You know, I just took over the O-line job here at Tulsa, and you know, just trying to figure out the best way to implement, you know, my spirituality and things like that with a new group of guys. And any suggestions you have or any advice you have for that, just in your day-to-day meetings, or whether it's praying with guys after practice, whatever it is, you know, because it can be a sensitive subject at times with some guys.
No question. In fact, going back, Mike, to the Air Force Academy, there was a time when I worked for Fisher DeBerry at the Air Force Academy that they would not let him lead our team in prayer. I mean, you know, and of course we found a way to navigate another way, you know. But Zach, I really think this. I think, and again, I'm not the head coach. I'm an assistant coach, but I think it always starts with trust. You know, they got to know. We've all heard it. They don't care what you know until they know that you care, and so they have to know that, hey, this guy really cares about me. He cares about me, my academics. He cares about my family. He cares about me being the best football player that I can be. And then I've always been a firm believer in, you know, none of us as assistant coaches like to be treated with disrespect or dog cussed by the head coach or something like that. Well, those players don't like that either. So don't treat them that way. You know, treat them with the utmost respect, be respectful of them. But at the same time, they need to know, hey, I'm not gonna accept anything less than your best. And I don't think you treat them all the same. I don't think you treat those kids the same, because I could chew Darren McFadden out and he was going to put a show on in practice for the next hour. And Felix Jones, you had to nurture, you had to encourage. If you chewed him out, he didn't respond well to that. So you got to have to kind of find what hot buttons to push with each player. But hey, you got to establish trust and just treat them with respect, and you'll be great. You'll do super.
All right, we got time for one more question. Who'd like to fire off the last question?
Your favorite go-to verses, Coach?
Oh, you know, and this probably comes from my wife. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I mean, that's probably an appropriate verse. I think it's Philippians 4:13 right now. There's one in Matthew 6:34 right now. Let's don't worry about what was behind us or what's in front of us. Let's just worry about today. And so those are two that I think are very appropriate right now. But there's a bunch in that book.
Yeah, sure are. Well, Coach, we really appreciate you being on today and just sharing your heart.
Hey, Bryan, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do for FCA, what you do for our master coach, really what you do for all this group of coaches and so many more whose thumbprints you touch, because you're making a difference, and we all appreciate it. And I just appreciate having the opportunity to be a part of this today.
Appreciate you so much, Coach. Well, guys, just want to encourage you. Actually, tomorrow I'll be putting information out about this. Tomorrow we have another Heart of the Coach from a different perspective. It'll actually be 11 a.m. Central Time. Kurt Warner, he's with the NFL Network, former Hall of Fame player, and he's going to give us a perspective from a player and the impact coaches have had on his life. Then this Friday we have Jeff Grimes, offensive coordinator from BYU. Next Tuesday, Van Malone, who's the assistant head coach, passing game coordinator, and cornerbacks coach at K-State. Next Wednesday, Jason Washington, safeties coach at Mississippi State. And then next Friday, the head coach at Murray State University, Dean Hood. And we've got more beyond that. You can't remember all that. We'll just take one at a time. But excited for you guys to be a part of this. Again, Coach Horton, thanks so much. Appreciate all you do. Thanks for being a good friend and a great mentor to so many coaches. You guys have a great day. God bless you.
Thank you, Brian.
Coach Horton, thank you.
Thanks, Coach Leonard. Good to see you. Coach Hendricks, thanks for coming. Jeb, good to see you.
Thanks, Coach.
Glenville, good to see you. Granville, good to see you.
Yes, sir.
All right, y'all have a good day. Coach Stugart, Jed,